All right, let's wrap up the AFC North. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Another really, I love all the storylines for every team, but you got the Steelers bringing in Aaron Rodgers. Another team that, I think the narrative is going to be that the Steelers are all in, and I think that's false because they are loaded with draft picks for next year. The Steelers are half all in.
And they just extended Omar Khan.
They just extended Omar Khan. I think non-quarterback roster, he is doing a good job, much like the way I would describe Andrew Berry and what he did in Cleveland for a few years. The quarterback, of course, is the most important thing.
Yep.
But I think Pittsburgh is uniquely set up to try to they take a shot and make a run with Rodgers this year, but also be in position to draft a quarterback for next year.
And they did draft one this year as well with Will Howard, who's not, you wouldn't expect him to be the future or anything, but it's an interesting, let's have this guy working in the background and see what happens.
They're at least taking shots, and you got to continue to take shots at that so that you don't get into this, we're all in on Kenny Pickett in this draft class. Again, it is ironic that the 2 years that the Steelers have really needed a quarterback, 2022 and this year was the year that there was, 1.5 first-round caliber quarterbacks. Jackson Dart traded back to get him. But 2 quarterbacks this year, Kenny Pickett in 22. But I think Pittsburgh, we'll talk about their defense and how loaded they are on that side of the ball. I think they have a chance to be the very best defense in the league. And who knows what you get from Rodgers. If you get any sort of throwback the clock type of play with him, turn back the clock type of play, all of a sudden Steelers are good.
So this is the thing. Everyone's going to focus on Aaron Rodgers and Rodgers to Metcalf and all that and how that's going to gel. I wouldn't overlook the fact, and this might not happen, but that defense, certainly on paper, I do think has the capacity to be one of those game-changing defenses. It could be the best defense in the league. Not just that, it could be a defense that's good enough that it carries an offense to somewhere it shouldn't be. And that doesn't happen very often in today's NFL. But every now and again, a defense shows up that is just scary week on week and is absolutely game-changing. Typically, those defenses have an absolutely nasty pass rush up front, and Pittsburgh, with the ability to deploy at the same time TJ Watt, Derek Harmon, Cameron Heyward, Alex Highsmith, and then have in reserve on the bench Nick Herbig, Keanu Benton, maybe Jack Sawyer if he shows anything. That could be a fearsome group that can rush the passer. Deep, consistent. And then you have, the back end with Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay and Joey Porter Jr. and Peyton Wilson heading into next year. And, it could be a scary unit. Now, maybe it won't. It'll just be an above-average defense, and then none of this matters. But if that is that level of defense, then Rodgers doesn't need to be amazing anymore. Then, if Rodgers plays just like he did last year, we could have a really imposing team. Because Rodgers, for his entire NFL career has been very risk-averse. He doesn't turn the ball over that much. He actually could exist on the game manager spectrum, if you like. And those guys, when paired with an amazing defense, is a pretty difficult combination to beat.
There's been a few years of Rodgers' career. Was it 2018 or so? There's a couple times when he was in Green Bay where we said, this is the best defense of Rodgers' career. And it didn't end up materializing. Either he didn't play as well or the defense wasn't as good as advertised. And we say this on the show a lot. It's difficult to predict good defense and to predict who the top 5 defenses are going to be. It's a lot easier to predict the best offenses. So in other words, the betting on the Ravens to have a top 5 offense, way better bet than betting on and pick your favorite defense. Pick whoever. Pick your best 5 defenses last year. It's just a better bet than betting on the defense to be as good as it was last season. But the ingredients the Pittsburgh Steelers have on that side of the ball, you listed all of them. I think they're legit. Nick Herbig is edge rusher 1 for a lot of teams around the NFL, and he's edge 3. If he could keep up some of the efficiency numbers and just how good he was getting after the quarterback. So 3 and 4 deep at edge, drafting Derek Harmon in the first round as an heir apparent to Cameron Heyward, who's still good. He still had a 90-plus PFF grade.
He's good. He's still amazing.
Yeah, still unbelievable. That front could be outstanding. And then in the secondary, they make this trade to go get Jalen Ramsey, and they bring in Darius Slay. I think they got better with the Jalen Ramsey trade, at least for this year. I think for this year they got better. Nothing against Micah Fitzpatrick. I just think Jalen Ramsey can still play, and even early in camp, they are deploying him all over the place. He could play nickel, he could play safety, he could play outside corner. I think their ability to play more man coverage, to maybe match up with Cincinnati in a special way, to maybe match up with Baltimore in a way. And remember, they gave Lamar Jackson his worst game last year, early in the year. They didn't the next 2 times, but they at least gave him his worst game for a bit. I think they just have much more flexibility in the secondary with Darius Slay, with Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter Jr., and that trio. We'll call them corners for now. So, yeah, I think top to bottom defensively, this team has a chance to be special. They're older, right? Ramsey's older, Slay's older, Heyward. Watt has had those, pesky injuries over the last couple of years. So there's a chance they're just too old and things, guys get hurt and they fall apart. But, man, on paper, if I was predicting who has the best defense in the league this year, outside of looking at schedule and what have you, I would predict the Steelers right now.
Yeah, I think they absolutely have a chance to be that level of defense. And I think that's something I haven't really seen anybody factoring that into how good or otherwise the Steelers are. It's just going to be, how does Rodgers work? Where are we going to get from his play? If that defense plays at a league-leading level, it totally changes what they need to get from Aaron Rodgers and the offensive side of the ball.
Let's talk offense then. With Aaron Rodgers, my description of Rodgers last year was, even in his 40s, physically he was okay. Now, he had lost a step when he was trying to evade the rush and everything. Do you chalk that up to age, or do you chalk that up to directly coming off an Achilles injury? They're both related, right? You're more likely to get hurt when you're older. But there's a chance he's more athletic this year and a little bit more nimble, but there's also a chance he is injury prone. I think the arm was fine, though.
Yes.
My issue was with the offense and the number of times it was like, here's a tight window throw. I'm still Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to make this tight window throw. And there weren't enough easy buttons because Aaron Rodgers offensively through the years, like his favorite offense didn't have a ton of easy buttons until he had Matt LaFleur, who pushed that button a lot. And I think that was a big reason why Rodgers had the 2 MVPs in 2020 and 21. So can Rodgers play for an offensive coordinator again, Arthur Smith? Because he didn't do that last year. This was Rodgers' offense and his guy and his thing. He's got to go back and play in a new system. Can he? And are there enough easy buttons in this offense? Because DK Metcalf, wide receiver 1, big questions at wide receiver 2, and if they have enough weapons to maybe complement Rodgers at this point in his career.
All right, that's enough of that, Steve. Over 50% of the people listening to this are not subscribed right now. So click that button, and then we can get back to whatever it is Steve's telling you about. Yeah, Rodgers physically is fine. His arm is legit still, and okay, he might not be what he was athletically, but he's still average. Like he's not his athleticism is not a detriment. Like the way Kirk Cousins was last year, 2 older guys coming off Achilles injuries. Cousins was diminished to the point where he was a problem within the offense physically. Like you couldn't run certain things because Cousins couldn't do it. He couldn't really make it to the mesh point, an outside zone. So they had to dump some of the things in the offense. I don't think any of that is true for Rodgers. He might not be what he was, but he's still fine athletically. The issue for Rodgers, I think, is a combination of how much is he going to allow himself to be coached by Arthur Smith? How much is he willing to concede what he wants to do versus what Arthur Smith says is the best thing for him to do? Because you can go back quite a lot of his career now and say, like, the only guy that's been able to win that argument, I guess, is Matt LaFleur. For the last couple of years of Mike McCarthy's offense in Green Bay, we were all debating, like, what's the problem here? Where is this malaise coming from? Is it Rodgers? Is it McCarthy? Like, what's the problem? So it was an issue then. Then LaFleur comes in. There was a sort of transition period where it took a bit of time and it wasn't working. And then, boom, we got back-to-back MVP seasons from Rodgers. Like, that's the best version. And then Rodgers goes and we get Nathaniel Hackett and it's not working again. So it's quite a while now of like the only guy that's been able to actually coach Rodgers hard and get the best version of him and I guess win that fight is Matt LaFleur. I think if this is going to work, Rodgers needs to lose that internal struggle to Arthur Smith. And even then, I don't know if it'll work, right?
Agreed.
But I think if it's got any chance, that has to be the dynamic. Then you get, whether or not Rodgers wins or not, at this point in his career, are the tendencies that he's always had a bigger problem? So remember when, like, Phillip Rivers got old And it's like he's just reached the point in his career where he now needs an offensive line. And Matt Ryan, same thing. Like when those quarterbacks, you don't lose the intelligence. You don't have the ability to sort of override a weakness that you used to have. Rodgers has reached that point now, I think, where it's tough because his PFF grade remained pretty good on a throw-to-throw basis. He was still making a lot of throws, but the offense just wasn't functioning. And I think that's a product of like he can't overcome things anymore, and there's no easy button. So these are the things that need to change. Like Rodgers needs to lose that argument internally, and he needs to hope that there's enough there within the offense to kind of overcome things that he doesn't like doing.
Do you think, I thought the Jets did a decent job of setting Aaron Rodgers up last year. 2 years ago, I think the offensive line was not going to be good. And we were saying, I don't know if Rodgers can play behind this offensive line.
Even with 4 snaps, if it had gone beyond that.
But last year they went and get Morgan Moses, Tyron Smith, and draft Olu Fashanu.
Yeah.
And the interior was pretty good. They were okay from a pass blocking perspective last year. But I think the Jets made the right moves as far as setting Rodgers up. It was a mid-tier, dead smack in the middle, 16th pass blocking grade the Jets had last year. Are the Steelers, are their offensive weapons in line even better than what the Jets have? I don't know that they are.
No. This is not a good situation, I don't think, on offense. Like, I question what the ceiling of that offensive line is.
They're young, and so that range could be really wide.
I mean, Zach Frazier could be fantastic at center.
He's good.
Really
I think he's the most consistent.
Yeah. Sayamalu's solid. We don't really know what we're going to get yet out of Troy Fautanu. A tackle. Broderick Jones looks like a problem, and the other guard spot is a question mark. So who knows? I think it's quite a range of outcomes, but that could be a problematic offensive line. And normally we preach just creep back toward average. When you've got a geriatric quarterback, I think you probably want that line higher than average. I think ideally you would like your line to be good if you've got an old quarterback that has some question marks. And then receiver, I would be really interested if they kept George Pickens and suddenly you had DK Metcalf and George Pickens and the mystery box of what Roman Wilson is going to be. That would be intriguing. Absent Pickens, having traded him away, it's like now you got DK Metcalf who, sure, he's physically imposing, but he's also quite one-dimensional. And then next up is the mystery box in Roman Wilson. That feels more problematic.
Yeah, and I've said this about DK a few times on the show now, too. He's always had a running mate. He's always had a Tyler Lockett. Last year it was JSN. It was really the trio for a bit of the season last year. DK as the guy. And I think there was points in Seattle where they tried to put a little bit more on his plate and not just have him run posts and slants and go balls. Can he be the straight-up go-to guy instead of just a downfield threat where I think he's at his best? So I think there's questions at receiver. I liked Roman Wilson coming out, but it's a question mark if he could be the true number 2. They did bring in Jonnu Smith. They have Pat Freiermuth. I think that's a decent 1-2 punch as far as pass-catching tight ends and the big blocker and Darnell Washington. So some weapons, but I think there's questions at O-line, questions as far as the playmakers go. The one other thing I'll throw out there, rookie Caleb Johnson, really liked him as a running back. Does this really become, remember the old Arthur Smith teams when they had Derrick Henry in Tennessee?
Yeah.
Tannehill would throw the ball like 25 times a game.
Right.
And he was uber efficient. The most efficient we ever saw from Ryan Tannehill. I think A.J. Brown was a big part of that. But is that the type of team we're looking at? If the defense is as good as we said, Caleb Johnson running the zone scheme, he's outstanding at that. And I think this line can be a pretty good run-blocking line. Is this a super game manager Aaron Rodgers, which he doesn't like. He doesn't like that. He likes to check out of runs. He likes to throw his little slant flat. He doesn't like that. But they might be set up for that type of style.
Well, that's the thing. That's part of this battle of wills, right? Is even if that's the plan, is Rodgers willing to let that happen? Like, is he prepared to say, okay, this is what we've called, this is what we believe is the right way of winning? Or is he just going to spend his entire game checking out of runs and trying to throw a slant?
Over-under for the Steelers is 8.5, and then we have to send a poll out to the crowd and see what they say. Not about the over-under, but something else. Over-under 8.5 from our partners and friends over at FanDuel. Where are you going for the Steelers?
I don't want to be pessimistic about the Steelers, but I feel like this is when the magic runs out for Mike Tomlin and he finally has his first losing season.
I mean, let me just say this.
Rodgers
narrative
ends Mike Tomlin is the headline.
We're on point. We're very X's and O's and personnel driven right now in this discussion. From a storyline perspective, Mike Tomlin, head coach, Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, DK Metcalf in as receiver. Jalen Ramsey in the secondary, the personalities that are in the building right now. I think the biggest thing, like what happens with the Steelers season, is what happens when they face adversity, or if they start 2-5.
Right. How
do they handle it? And so this has a chance to, like, legitimately make a Super Bowl run, or completely blow up. And no matter what happens, I think Omar Khan has done a good job of at least stocking up on draft picks, and it's not like, okay, now you're screwed, you're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
But the range of outcomes for this season for this team is really wide.
It is, and it's such a fascinating combination of personalities. I mean, Rodgers, for whatever you think of him, better or worse, is one of the most sort of dominant personality traits in the NFL, in part because of what he's done, like his resume. And look at the way when he was on Hard Knocks with the Jets the first year, like he was treated with reverence in that building. Those guys were worshiping the ground he walked on. And maybe some of that luster has worn off from what's happened since, but he brings with him a lot of gravitas. Meanwhile, Mike Tomlin is one of the most, strong head coach personalities in the entire NFL, again, because of his resume. What happens the first time those two guys butt heads, right? That happened in New York, and Rodgers won, effectively. I mean, he won the Battle of Wills there, and Robert Saleh got fired, and Rodgers hung around to the end. Like, what happens when him and Tomlin go head-to-head? Does Tomlin run him out of the bit? Like, how does that work?
And if the end of this, like, Rodgers went to the Jets, obviously didn't save them. They won, 5 games last year, whatever it was. What if Rodgers is the quarterback that ends the streak for Tomlin as far as winning record?
Yeah.
So that's where the over-under is, dead smack at 8.5. I'll take the over and stay. They're still a 9-win team here.
Yeah, I'm going under
for the Steelers.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.